house felt different on Sunday morning, as though the walls themselves knew something unusual was about to happen and were holding their breath. Alexander had noticed it the moment he woke up. The air was heavier, the light softer, and every sound seemed amplified. Earlier that week, Sophia had drafted a menu and insisted Alexander send it to Sammie for confirmation. He'd hesitated. He knew Sammie wasn't picky and had no allergies. But he sent it anyway. He didn't want to argue with his wife over meal choices. He wandered through the house, restless as his thoughts circled the same questions. How would the conversation unfold? What would happen between Sophia and Sammie? He didn't want any tension or drama between them, so he started conjuring probable safe conversation topics, rehearsing lines in his head like an actor preparing for a scene while assuring himself that everything was under control. He watched Sophia moving through the house with calm precision, setting the table, adjusting placements, folding napkins as if they were expecting her parents. Alexander didn't know how to feel about her calmness as he hovered nearby, pretending to help while his mind was elsewhere. He fumbled with the cutlery, distracted, and eventually stepped back, letting Sophia take over. By afternoon, his nerves were stretched thin. He was checking the clock obsessively, pacing the hallway, and had visited the restroom more times than he could count. Time seemed to be moving slowly, cruelly slow. When the doorbell finally rang, Sophia gave him a subtle nod. Alexander wiped his palms on his trousers and walked to the door, heart pounding. He opened it and froze. Sammie stood there, poised and radiant, her smile tentative but warm. She was as beautiful as ever. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a tall man with confident eyes and an easy smile. His hand rested casually at her waist. Sammie held out a bottle of wine, her expression brightening. "Hello, Alex. I hope you don't mind. This is Daniel." For a moment, Alexander couldn't breathe. The floor felt unstable beneath him. His mind scrambled to catch up with her words. Sophia, sensing his discomfort, stepped forward with practiced grace and took the bottle from Sammie. "Of course. The more the merrier. Welcome to our home." The dining table came alive as their conversation flew in unexpected directions, as if Sophia and Sammie were old friends. Alexander had recovered from the initial shock, but his attention kept drifting to Sammie. She sat elegantly in a simple gown that whispered sophistication beside the man she had introduced earlier. No jewelry distracted from her natural beauty, save for a pair of small gold hoops that caught the light when she turned her head. He was smitten all over again, and the tightness in his chest mirrored the growing tension in his trousers. He struggled to act normal. Sophia said something that made everyone laugh. Alexander failed to catch the drift of their conversation, but he forced a chuckle just as the man he had forgotten his name brushed a finger down Sammie's arm. Alexander's stomach twisted and his eyes glinted with disgust. Who was this man? How did Sammie meet him? Why was he so touchy, acting so familiar and desperate? Questions raced through Alexander's mind, each one sharper than the last. He was definitely Swedish, that much was clear, he concluded. And judging by the way Sophia and Sammie giggled at his silly jokes, he was also probably an amateur comedian intent on impressing everyone. Sophia placed her cutlery down and picked up her wine glass, her eyes flicking between Daniel and Sammie. She took a slow sip, then set the glass down with a faint smile. "So, Sammie," she said, "I must confess, Alexander has told me so much about you. I wasn't sure what to expect. But now, having met you, I think I understand why the heart would want to linger, even after the world has moved forward." Sammie's smile faltered. She reached for her glass, and Daniel squeezed her hand beneath the table. Alexander stiffened. His fork scraped against the plate, and Sammie glanced at him, her expression soft but resolute. "I didn't know what to expect either," she said. "But first off, you're an amazing cook. I love the strawberry cake, and I'm glad we finally got to meet and really talk." The women giggled, and Sophia blushed. "Oh, thank you, Sammie. Actually, it was a team effort. Alex was quite helpful too. She smiled at Alexander, who grinned back and reached for his glass of wine. "But if you don't mind, how long have you and Daniel been together?" 3 months next week, Daniel replied with a grin. "And I think being truly in love makes people realize they don't need to wait in the shadows or hold on to what-ifs. Real love gives you a reason to move on from the past." He spoke calmly, almost soothingly, and kissed the back of Sammie's hand. Alexander watched every move, his words hitting him like a slap. He gripped his wine glass tightly, knuckles white. 3 months? What a joke. He forced a smile and gulped his wine, fury and despair knotting in his chest. The meal continued, with everyone except Alexander talking about books, travel, and life. Sammie, once the storm in his heart, was now caught in someone else's gravity. Her laughter, once his, now spilled freely at Daniel's uncanny jokes. Not possible, this cannot be happening, he thought as he sat quietly, swirling the last drop of wine in his glass. Suddenly, he pushed away from the table and stood up. "I'll grab another bottle," he said to no one in particular before heading towards the kitchen. In truth, he needed a moment away from the quiet torment of watching Sammie and that man. Their closeness, their ease, the way he always leaned in, and the way Sammie responded, it was unbearable. Alexander lingered in the kitchen. He nearly hand-washed the dishes, but for Sophia calling out to him. Sighing deeply, he stepped out just to find that Sammie and the man were about to leave. As much as he wished to spend more time with Sammie, the sight of the man's hand at her back made his stomach twist. They exchanged goodbyes at the door. Sammie smiled warmly and promised to stay in touch with Sophia. Then, with a final glance, she stepped out into the night beside Daniel. As the door clicked shut, Sophia turned to Alexander and gently wrapped her arms around his waist. "They seem so well matched," she said softly. "It's beautiful to see." Alexander exhaled and faintly nodded, his face unreadable. He breathed in Sophia's mild raspberry scent, but his mind replayed the evening, the laughter, the glances, the words. Sammie's smile, the softness in her eyes when she looked at Daniel, eyes that once belonged to him. His lips grazed Sophia's ear, but his heart was elsewhere. He wasn't sure he could ever truly let go. Days turned into weeks, but the fire burning in his heart refused to dim. Scrolling through her social media at night had become a habit. Memorizing and staring at photos of Sammie and Daniel together always stirred a new kind of rage beneath his skin, and gradually his behavior began to change. As usual, Sophia noticed and did not fail to point it out. "Babe, you're always distracted and distant," she murmured one evening, setting a glass of wine beside him. Her tone was carefree, but he instantly saw how her eyes clouded. "I'm fine," he lied, brushing off her concern. Her smile curved in a way that made his stomach knot. He instantly knew that Sophia was hurting. "Of course you are. But if it's about Sammie, I think it's time to let go of the past." "Babe, please, don't get yourself worked up over nothing. Sammie was a mistake I allowed to linger for too long. It's done, and right now I need only you. Nobody else." He whispered, leaned in and caught her lips in a deep kiss as his mind drifted back to Sammie. The thought of her consumed him as Sophia moaned in his arms. More than a month had passed since that lunch with Alexander and Sophia. It was late one Friday when Sammie returned home from work, her body weary. After a brisk shower, she stepped into her softly lit bedroom, the air still scented with traces of peach and lavender from her shower gel. Her eyes drifted to the chair by the dresser where her pink nightgown hung like a whisper of comfort. Allowing the towel to freely drop at her feet, she slipped it on, the fabric cool against her skin. Ignoring her moisturizing cream, which seemed to be calling out to her from its position on the dresser, she reached for the night lamp. A warm glow spilled across the room, softening the edges of her thoughts. Placing the towel in the laundry basket, she crawled into bed and sank into the sheets, their familiar warmth wrapping around her like a quiet embrace. Exhaling deeply, she felt the day's stress melting away. At that moment, her phone buzzed. Startled, she reached for it, fingertips brushing the screen. The moment her eyes met the message, her breath caught. Her chest tightened. She blinked once, then again, as the words settled into her. You didn't mean it. I saw it in your eyes. You still feel something for me.